I made a video the other day, and a comment war sort of ensued that was horribly unproductive. But some things got said in it that I just can't let lie, and I think everyone who was a part of that conversation needs to hear this directly from me. When talking about how the West needs to treat the head covering garments required in many sects of Islam, I got accused of being a white guy who knew nothing about what those garments actually mean, told things that, like, for a vast majority of Muslims, this isn't a big deal. It's just a fashion choice, all of these kinds of things, and that in and of itself, it's not a problem. And most of the things I said weren't my opinion. In fact, I'm not the first one to even have said them. For the most part, I was taking a direct interpretation from Yasmin Muhammad, who was a young girl living in the West, living in Vancouver, Canada, who was forced by her terrorist husband to wear the full niqab and walk around virtually unknown to society. In fact, the first time she'd ever left her house without her husband after she got married was because her mom was rushed to the hospital. That's the life that she lived. She was fully veiled every way possible. No one knew her name, her face, her eye color, her identity in any way. And in referencing her experience, one individual told me that myself and Yasmin Muhammad and Ayan Hirsi Ali were not people who were qualified to speak on this subject because we were biased, because we've left our faiths. And then defended Islam as a whole, as many people do about Christianity. And I just have to say this. When I was being bent over my father's knee as a young boy, beat bare ass with a leather belt, it certainly felt like real Christianity to me. When I was deprived of any kind of science education, so I had to re-educate myself as an adult about evolution, about the history of the universe, about all of these critical things, that felt like a problem of real Christianity to me. When I had to deal with the consequences of having virtually no sex education, which for me resulted in being vulnerable enough to be taken advantage of by an older boy, 3.5 years older than me, for over a year. That felt like a problem pretty directly linked to my Pentecostal Christian upbringing, whose answer to sex was just, don't talk about it, don't have it, God will hate you if you do. Those things all really seemed like real Christianity. And when you say that I'm not qualified to speak on this manner, it sounds a lot like those people who say, well, I'm sorry you had a bad childhood, but you see, your parents, they didn't get the real Christianity. They took it too seriously and too literally. Well, for anybody, and this includes whether it was my parents, my clergy, my teachers in my Christian schools, the only excuse they needed was that it was written in their holy book, the Holy Bible. That was it. They didn't care that some scholar had written a bunch of corrections and taken a bunch of part out and said, no, this part's supposed to be metaphorical. If it's literally written in the book, it can literally be done to you, and it should literally happen to you if you sin. That's the religion I was brought up with. And to tell me that that's not real Christianity, well, that's the real book that real Christians read, that they get their real ideas from, that cause real harm. And that needs to be said. And the same can be said for Ayan Hirsi Ali. I'm sure it felt like real Islam when she was having her clitoris sliced off with a blade. I am sure for Yasmin Muhammad, it felt like real Islam when she didn't leave the house for a year after secretly getting a divorce from her husband because she wasn't sure if he'd be around the corner there to murder her. I'm sure it feels like real Islam. And the fact that Ayaan Hirsi Ali has to have a full security detail everywhere she goes because of the type of things she dares to say in public. I'm sure it felt like real Islam to her. So when you want to discredit my opinion on the matter, which was a direct quote from a brown-skinned Arab woman from another country, maybe that's on you. Maybe you should listen to the exact words I said, read Yasmin Mohammed's book, read things written by Yasmin and Ayaan, and actually deal with the claims that have been made by the two of them and myself, rather than just make it about identity. Because you do us a great disservice when you say that we don't understand how the religion works. We understand it far too well.